In your exchange right at the beginning of this meeting with the chair, you said that the European Council had not yet come to a view on the legal basis for any potential transition arrangement. But that's not actually true, is it? Because in the EU Council negotiating mandate of the 22nd of May, paragraph 19, the Council says, should a time-limited prolongation of Union acquis be considered, this would require existing Union regulatory, budgetary, supervisory, judiciary and enforcement instruments and structures to apply. This is, in essence, that phrasing was copied and pasted into the European Parliament's resolution of the 3rd of October. So it's crystal clear that any transitional arrangements would be governed by the same regulatory, budgetary, supervisory, judiciary and enforcement instruments. Can you just therefore confirm that that would be the basis for any transitional arrangement?
So what I actually said was they hadn't agreed the final guidelines. I didn't say legal base, I said final guidelines, unless I misspoke, which I don't think I did. Because those final guidelines will be agreed assuming sufficient progress, of course, which we still don't have, in December. At that point, they may well that may well be their stance. Bear in mind, however, this is a negotiation. But broadly speaking, that's consistent with what the Prime Minister said too. That this structure will look quite like where we are now.
And do you feel that the Cabinet and your parliamentary party also understand that the transitional arrangements will be on this basis?
Well, there'll be something like that. I said this is their negotiating position. This is not handed down. It's one of the things that always sort of irritates me, frankly, about British public life, that people assume that anything that comes from Europe is on tablets of stone. Everything we have is an opinion. It's not quite like that. That's their start position. Maybe where we end up, but our position is what the Prime Minister laid out in terms. It's not that dissimilar, but it's not identical.
Okay, thank you. I wanted to move on now to the issue of a potential no-deal scenario. Mm-hmm. And just thought it might be useful to look at the issue of the Port of Dover, mm-hmm. just as an illustration of the potential impact of a no-deal scenario. As you may know, the Select Committee visited the Port of Dover last week, and we were told there that for every additional 2 minutes that would be added to customs processing and proceedings, that would create an additional 17 miles of tailback of heavy goods vehicles from Dover to Ashford. And of course, the Port of Dover is processing around about 10,000 HGVs per day. How do you feel is the state of the preparedness for a no-deal scenario in that particular context and example?
I mean, Dover's not the only one. Dover's probably the sharpest example because of its lack of parking capacity, bluntly. And we would need to create some workaround for that. Now, there are a variety of ways of doing that. At some point, we're not in a position to sort of publish it yet, but at some point we probably will publish some of these components of the contingency planning. But a lot of work is going into that, both in the Department of Transport and in HMRC.
But just to be clear then, for our no-deal play, if you like, negotiating position to have any kind of realism, you need to have this kind of issue absolutely clear and settled really by, well, I would very, very soon, because otherwise it becomes absolutely clear that the no-deal scenario is just a bluff.
Not very, very soon. It's got to be in place to work on the 29th of March 2019. That's what it has to do. It's not a bluff. And in any event, Mr. Kinnock, if even were it not a useful negotiating tool, we'd need to do it anyway, because the other way round, the pressure on us if we felt suddenly that our parts of our economy where there's a grind to a halt will be enormous to give in anything. Now, 2 minutes leading to a 17-mile queue sounds incredibly dramatic, but give you a sort of idea of how the way some of these things work. That's different. We're talking at Dover, we're talking Ro-Ro, so it's a little different. But to give you a measure of the sorts of numbers we're talking about, on containers coming in across the common external tariff barrier into other ports, say Southampton, wherever, the clearance time on a single container is 4 seconds. 4 seconds, right? Now that's for 98%. Those are ones who don't get inspected. Most traffic that crosses borders doesn't get inspected. 2% does. So you've got issues like that. Other countries, I went to the Canadian-American border at Windsor / Detroit. I went there because I knew it from running business across it myself. I've sold across borders myself in the past. I knew this border well. And it's an incredible choke point. It's a choke point like Dover is a choke point. And their clearance time is 54 seconds on an average truck. But they also use a whole series of systems, clearing things before they get to port, authorised economic operators. These things become very important in Northern Ireland as well. An authorised economic operator is a trusted trader. We use them much less than other countries do and increase that. Electronic pre-notification, that's what actually accelerates most of the container traffic that goes through. There's a huge amount of work going into all of this, deliberately to make sure that this is not a bluff, Mr. Kinnock. This is the reality we have to cope with if we end up in that circumstance. Not that we intend to, and I keep stressing every time, it's not the aim, but it's what we may need to do in that circumstance.
But the fundamental difference between this and those examples you just gave is when the systems were being designed to enable that processing and that administration, the people designing the systems knew what kind of circumstances they were going to be in. In this case, everyone's in the dark. We don't know whether there'll be a deal or no deal at all, or whether it'll be certain aspects of, for example, authorised economic operators, or what will happen with rule of origins.
Yeah.
So I really felt for the staff, I have to say, and the management in Dover, because they are being asked to design systems, or I don't even know if they are being asked, without knowing what the future reality looks like. How can you design an infrastructure and an IT system without actually knowing your direction of travel?
No, I'm sure. I sympathise with the staff at Dover too. They're not designing the system, by the way, but that being done by HMRC and with physical aspects of it being done by DFT. But it's not true to say that wait a minute. It's not true to say that we don't know what the parameters of the worst case outcome, or the most stress case outcome will be. For a start, it's in the event we're talking about WTO, we're then talking about the application of Union Custom Code, which we already apply, of course, in all the ports where we bring things in from outside the European Union. So this is exactly what's being applied. And the Union Custom Code is, of course, what's already in the Chief system, which you probably saw. That's the green screen system, and will be in the CDS system, which was actually underway before all of this started, and will come into effect the very beginning of 2019, 1st January 2019. Those two systems, by the way, will operate in parallel. So we've got, if need be, so that gives us an extra contingency. They're not intended to, but if we need to, we can do that. But it will. What is the case, and I don't think one should, as it were, blink in the face of it, is there would be an increase in volume of checking. It wouldn't be quite pro rata to what you see, because some of the stuff's coming from the European Union. We would have pretty good ideas of where it's coming from, what its phytosanitary background is, and so on. It'd be the same as the day before, but there's a lot of work to do on it, and it's underway.
Thank you.